Good day. My name is Bruce Boulder, and I'm the founder of the Enterprise Engagement Alliance. And we're here today to talk about the ISO 30414 Human Capital Certification with two companies that have actually gone through the process. And that's Allianz, one of the major insurance and related financial services companies in the world, and Infineon Technologies, which likewise is a major worldwide technology company. And from Allianz, we have Jochen Feringer, and please forgive my pronunciation. He's head of HR analytics for Allianz. And Ingo Kormeyer, he's global head of HR services and people operations for Infineon Technologies. And also joining us today is Heiko Morderer, Dr. Heiko Morderer, whose company, 4C Group, a management consultancy, is the first company to conduct ISO human capital reporting certifications really anywhere in the world. And then just a quick little background before we get started. I always have to thank the people that help contribute to our organization, all the different types of companies in human capital and enterprise engagement solutions that contribute to a more systematic approach to business. And always remember, we're here to help. Many of our services and information platforms are free of charge with extensive libraries, case studies that never cost a penny. So that's it with the advertisements here. I'm going to stop the share and first get started with Jochen, if you wouldn't mind. Why did you decide to undertake a certification to disclose your human capital practices and then to allow an independent company to audit that before publishing it?
Yeah, in Allianz, we publish our HR data since 2010. Since 2014, we converted that into a people fact book, which has already to that time followed certain standards. But due to the course and also the request from shareholders, stakeholders, externally, we decided also that we want to certify our external published data, because we have learned during this path that the data which we there disclose used by our stakeholders heavily, meaning there's, for example, candidates who are looking into our people fact book to understand how your human capital has developed over time in our organization. There's shareholders who have certain questions and they prepare themselves via the fact book, sure, also via the sustainability report, which we publish for the annual general meeting we have every year. And there are also a lot of other good use cases why we decided then in the end also to certificate our external disclosed data via the ISO standard.
So I didn't hear anything about compliance. The European Union does require basic human capital standard disclosures, but they are frankly very weak. So this was not a compliance issue for you, Jochen?
Not in principle. So for sure, we look at these topics also from an audit point of view. We have been via our risk areas also challenged on that, but in principle, when we looked at the possibilities, when we decided that we want to be ISO certificated, then that was mainly also a decision by us in HR due to the experience we have made.
So Ingo, in your case, was this a compliance issue? Were you under pressure from the regulators, or is this a really, in a sense, a talent and customer marketing strategy, or some other motive? What was your motive for doing this at Infineon?
So the primary purpose, and thank you for your question, is to position Infineon as a very transparent and sustainable company, as we are. And we call ourselves a people company, and we are closely aligned with our audit and compliance colleagues, but this was not the driver. This is a contributor to this overall story that we would like to present not only to potential candidates, and so position ourselves as an attractive employer, but we also want to proactively address everything that has to do with ESG, so the environmental, the social, as well as the governance pieces of it. And this is very important also for our board.
Well, thank you. And Heiko, from your perspective, As you know, people, when you mention ISO standards to most people, it's not a way to get people to attend a webinar or a conference. It basically tends to scare off human resources people. They run for the hills. Why do you think that is? And what do you think are the benefits that companies should really be thinking about to overcome that almost a fear of standards?
Well, thanks, Bruce, for having me, first of all. I really appreciate this to be a part of the session here. I've talked to a lot of CHROs and HR managers in the last years in the ISO 30414 context. And I always ask them why they are considering to implement the standard and why some of them even are considering to get certified. So the list of possible benefits for organizations that I'm now going to share is not an academic exercise. It's really a condensed, real life picture directly from the market about this topic. So the most important aspect for most companies to consider adopting the standard is an ESG related topic. So because by being compliant to the ISO standard, organizations can further position themselves in the context of sustainable corporate governance. And it is directly contributing to the S and the G in ESG. And this is one of the main reasons why a lot of companies consider adopting this standard, because most of them have a pretty good idea how to contribute to the E in ESG, but a lot of companies are struggling with the S and with the G. So, and another beneficial aspect is also meeting investors and stakeholder requirements. So ISO 30414 gives investors confidence that the assets they are investing in have a strong and transparent human capital management framework, and the standard addresses investors' needs for confidence, consistency, and validity in the human capital disclosure of organizations. And analysts and investors are increasingly looking beyond financial statements, for a more comprehensive view of company performance, and they're looking for data to enhance their understanding of ESG-related risks and opportunities. And this is the last benefit aspect that I'll mention here, is the whole stakeholder community, not only the shareholders or not only the employees, but all other stakeholders as well. So by implementing the standard, organizations are in a better position, you might say, to demonstrate the benefits of having a strategic and systematic approach to achieving goals through people. And especially for, really honestly reporting on those efforts to all relevant stakeholders, not only investors, as I said, but also to talent and customers and supply chain partners and distribution partners, for example. So
right. No, please finish.
Yeah, so if you look at these benefits, which a lot of companies expect from adopting 30414 or even get certified against the standard, it's clear that this is not a mere compliance issue or mere compliance topic, but that most companies look at this topic as from a business point of view, as a business opportunity, basically.
Oh, thank you. And this is a question that isn't on the list I sent you, gentlemen, but it's not a curveball, but it comes out of this conversation. ISO standards focus very interestingly to me on really establishing the purpose of the organization, the methodologies that you're using to address the various, the 11 key categories, how you're measuring that result, and then what you're doing about it. That's the general framework for the ISO standard, as I understand it anyway. So does this really, Ingo, in a sense, become a performance management tool for you as well? A better way to run your business to create more value out of your people? In other words, it's not just a reporting tool. Does it become a performance management tool in a way?
Yeah, Bruce, I think you nailed it quite nicely. For us, this is one measure to increase our organizational performance by applying a consistent benchmarking methodology that we can then also consistently publish to the external world, so that we start comparing standardized apples to apples and not to oranges. So we appreciated that approach a lot because it nicely contributes to our target setting and also to the strategy, not only in the area of sustainability, but also our general business strategy, as we provide a lot of transparency into the market in order to attract the right people and also to retain them with us, as we are operating in a highly competitive environment these days.
And from your standpoint, Johan, before I ask you the question about who you had to get the buy-in to do this, why did you go with an ISO standards or other standards that are coming out, other metrics? What made you dive into ISO 30414?
Oh, it's quite simple. Maybe I start with that. Sorry.
Yeah, Ingo, why don't you answer, and then I'll take that over to Johan.
Yeah, sorry for that. I overheard that. Very simply, because we are used to ISO and IATF standards anyhow, because we are a manufacturing company. So it was obvious to use a methodology that the organization, not only HR, because also the rest of the organization is used to.
That's very interesting. Johan, thank you for that. Johan.
Yeah, also the same here at Allianz. The main objective was also to understand how we can via the standard benchmark ourselves to the market, looking into our peers as well. So let's phrase it like this: one pillar of our strategy is outperform, and outperform does mean for us at Allianz we want to be at least at the benchmark level or better. And for that reason, we searched for a possibility where can we contribute as HR also to that strategy, and what is the base we can use for that. And to my knowledge, even there's a lot of metric standards out there for sure, but they are not 100% comparable. So that's why we decided for the ISO standard, due to also the certification approach behind. And I'm with Ingo totally. So we are at least also in HR heavily used to ISO standards. We use them also for our shared service centers, etc., in HR. So meaning that was then a logical step forward to be ISO certificated.
Well, thank you for that. By the way, ISO made the big news in the US today because, or this week, because they set a standard in the credit card business now designating that when you go buy a gun in the US, it's going to be tagged as a purchase, as a gun. Before it was just general merchandise. ISO made the news. Johan, what did it take to convince management to do this? This is an investment in time and money. What kind of ROI did you I think Heiko gave us a very good view of the return on investment all of you have, but who did you have to convince and how?
Yeah, so we have the luxury situation in a way that the main contributors to that process are under one umbrella in Allianz. So in our holding division H6, we bundle HR, compliance, and other areas. And that's why we needed to convince in a way only the global CHRO and also the global head of compliance to be part of this process. And for sure, in the end, we not really needed to convince, but we needed to inform our top management, our board member, Renate Wagner, and she was really a kind of fan of it to do this approach, to follow this approach and to get ISO certificate.
But at the end of the day, the CEO has to sign off on this. This isn't a lower level. She wasn't necessarily involved in the day-to-day, but she had to be aware. This is a very important decision. I mean, was that a CEO decision at the end of the day?
It was a board member decision, as a board member responsible for HR. Mm-hmm. And below her, there's also the global CHRO responsible for total HR. So for sure, the CEO via the board representation was involved, but it was maybe a decision of our relevant or responsible board member.
Oh, now that's interesting. And from a governance standpoint, then you have somebody representing human capital on the board of directors of Allianz, and yes, that individual is responsible for that. It's delegated to him or her, I guess in this case, she, and she bought off on it, had her support, and that kind of gave you the go. Make sense? That's correct?
Yes.
Well, that's very, very interesting. And I don't think that's just a German phenomenon. The boards more in the US now also are getting involved with this. So Ingo, what about you? What did you have to do? Who did you have to convince and how to move ahead with this?
Honestly speaking, it was not always difficult to convince. I'm a direct report to our CHRO. We had a discussion in our management board, and we involved Markus, my boss, is reporting into our CEO. We had a conversation with Jochen, our CEO. We went to a board meeting, 15 minutes. We got the blessing, and we regularly reported out to the CEO where we stand and executed accordingly. So it was a dynamic process and a quick one, honestly speaking, because it's obvious that it makes sense.
So what were there, in terms of implementation now, what were some of the main challenges, Jochen? Well, by the way, actually, let me get back to you on this, Heiko. From your standpoint, working with other companies, where do you see these decisions coming from? It sounds like it's being evangelized, I would say, by CHROs, high-level people in human resources management. But where are the decisions? Are boards usually involved, CEOs? What are you seeing?
Yeah, well, so first of all, from my experience, there are discussions on executive management level about potential risks due to the increasing transparency, because transparency hurts. And I mean, we've now learned from two very positive examples that there was a lot of support from the top management for this topic, but in most companies that I experienced this and that I worked with, it was very important to have an open discussion, for example, between the CHRO, the CFO, the Chief Risk Officer, or the Chief Compliance Officer, in order to make it transparent to everyone. You know, what are the reasons why we are doing this? What are the benefits that we expect for the company? Also, some of the required data might in some cases be outside of the area of responsibility of the HR function. You might also need data, for example, from the CFO department or from compliance. But in the end, the success factor has always been collaboration and a common understanding on C-level, and everything else can be solved. And by the way, none of the potential risks that some top managers were in the first instance afraid of ever materialized. So these two very positive examples are really great. It's really great to hear that, and I'm glad to hear that. But in other companies, there are really a lot of discussions around, potential reputational risks. For example, if you are suddenly disclosing information like, number and type of disciplinary actions in your organization, or number and type of grievances filed, So these were the most intense discussions, but in the end, everything, none of these potential reputational risks ever materialized.
But that's very interesting that was a fundamental concern.
Yeah.
What about disclosing competitive information? Because neither of your companies, gentlemen, have competitors that are disclosing this type of information. Maybe they are to a degree, but they're not certified, they're not audited, and they're not in a strategic and systematic form. Are there concerns about a competitive risk? And I could ask Jochen and Ingo for that.
Concerns, not really. As I have mentioned, so we know from our own research that our peers are also publishing, besides sustainability report, HR reports. So maybe it's also an industry factor in a way that insurance companies are more transparent in this respect. So that's why we didn't consider that really as a certain risk.
Ingo, I'm sorry, in your case, anybody consider disclosures a competitive risk other than and that, that excellent point of reputation risk?
So not really, honestly speaking, because we decided already at an earlier stage, a number of years ago, to have an HR report as well as a sustainability report. And we are on the same path as Allianz is by providing transparent information. And this was not a difficult one, neither from a risk nor from a reputational, let's say, concern perspective, but we openly discussed. That is why we went to the board, by the way, to openly address it and also get the CFO's blessing, because topics like compliance and audit are in his area of responsibility. So we wanted to have full transparency and also an open discussion here. And as I said, it was a quick one, less than 15 minutes.
Well, both of yours are publicly held companies, and I think you're both listed in the United States, one of the US exchanges. So, but you've already saved your company a boatload of money, because the Securities and Exchange Commission is shortly going to be issuing new rules. And by every measure, you can just, I'm not a lawyer, of course, but it sounds like you can, gentlemen, can slap your ISO certification into your 10K filing and far exceed anything that anybody else is doing. But let me get to this issue of data. You know, the companies in the US that opposed the SEC disclosures and that are going to be strident if the SEC proposes metrics, and that's what the hint is, that they're actually going to require certain metrics. But and their big argument was, oh, data, it's impossible. It'll be very expensive to get data on human capital, gobs of legal time and whatnot. Gentlemen, since you're not US company, or pardon me, you're not based in the US, I'll ask you bluntly, was it an insurmountable task to get the data needed for the ISO 30414 compliance? I mean, certification. That'd be okay, fine. Jochen, I'll put that to you first.
Okay, thank you. Not really, no. As I have outlined in the beginning, we publish since over 10 years HR figures, and with that we installed also audited processes in this respect. In parallel, also since 2016, we developed a global, we call it now employee master platform, where we capture the data from our employees around the world. Also following here, for sure, the local standards, which are required. In every country, there are certain different laws. But with that, I think it was not a big deal in a way to manage the process with Heiko and have the data available.
Ingo, from your standpoint.
Same here. I'm the global data owner for all HR data. And we also have a global master data system, so it was not difficult to get this data put together. We had to have a bit of a look here and there with some certain, let's say, local specialties with legal regulations that might be, let's say, a bit contradicting. But we found a way, and that is why we, from a process perspective, just to do a sneak preview, we did the check first and then did the audit a year later in order to give us some time to adapt where we need to adapt and to, let's say, polish where some polish was required. Yeah.
So how long then, Heiko, does this process take? And then I'll ask these gentlemen from their perspective. If somebody wants to embark on this, and it sounds to me there really is a pre-audit that some companies should do. And also we have to note to the viewers that these companies were already ahead of the game. They're already publishing human capital reports. They've already had that mindset, which saves them considerable time. But assuming a company has already gotten to the stage where they value human capital enough to have a strategy report on it, Heiko, how long does it take?
Well, it's certainly depending on the complexity and of an organization and how big an organization is, and also on the level of available information that's already there. But as a rule of thumb, you can say if you're conducting kind of a pre-audit or quick check, you know, in order to figure out whether it makes sense to kick off a fully fledged certification audit. So this quick checkup would probably require a month, give or take. And if then this quick checkup, you know, if the result is, well, you're good to go, and we don't see any reasons why you should not embark on a fully fledged certification journey, then if everything works well, we are talking about 3 to 4 months net for this whole exercise. At least for large companies that have a certain level of complexity. So the complexity drivers are not do we have the data around FTE, costs per FTE and things like that. The complexity drivers are rather, organizations that are globally operating and have maybe a country location in Brazil with 10 employees and also in Malaysia with 8 employees, and to have these data to get these data into your central data system, that's the complexity of this whole topic. So you always have to deal with decisions like, do we accept 98%, having captured 98% of the population, or do we only accept 100% of the population? So, but give or take 3 to 4 months for a fully fledged certification audit.
But and I'm going to turn this over to our colleagues in a second, or your colleagues in a second, but I would imagine if a company has never published a human capital report and has never embarked on this, I would add probably 2 years. Wouldn't you, gentlemen? Well, I'm going to turn that over to you, Johan. First off, how long did it take you, and in your case, and then what would you think it would have taken you if you had to start from scratch?
Well, for sure, if we would have started from scratch, longer. But I remember the times when we started all that process, and also convincing the top management of disclosing certain data, which are at a certain time was also not in the focus of our internal reporting. That was a challenge. And we could only convince here our stakeholders internally by explaining that partly in other areas, other parts of the world, these data are disclosed already. And that helped us. Maybe this is also a kind of advice what I can give here to the audience in the US. Have a look into that, what we do here in Europe, Ingo and myself, what we have published in our reports. That is always a good starting point if you are not on that path, or if you want to start this path. Yeah? So it is quite easy to compare what others do. That helps you to convince your stakeholders internally.
So from a standpoint from you, about how long did it take the process to actually get the certification once you signed off on it?
If the question goes to me again, so
yeah.
I think we started last year in May. We did together the pre-audit with Heiko, and we finished the process in November, December last year. So between the pre-audit, we had a summer break. So I think in a nutshell, as Heiko has alluded, 3-4 months in net.
That's terrific. How about you, Heiko? I'm sorry, Ingo.
For us, it took also between 5 and 6 months, but we decided to have a year, let's say a pause between the quick check and the real audit, because we foresaw a fundamental org change, and we foresaw, let's say, a closing of a deal, and we foresaw a CEO change in between. So we decided to go in with a clean slate and then discuss with our new CEO. That is why we simply waited a year. From an overall perspective, this quick check is for me a valuable step to simply do something like a maturity assessment. How good is your data really? And then the audit itself, as we already knew and had an idea about what this whole thing is about, was then way more simple and way more relaxed than a regular audit, so to speak.
Well, I'm going to be sure to send this video to the Securities and Exchange Commission, and I'm not even kidding. When they come out with that, we will be submitting a statement. I'm not necessarily implicating you, gentlemen. Don't worry. I'm not going to tangle you up in U.S. politics, but so I kind of take that back. But it's certainly very important to make the point to people that no, that getting this data is not the challenge. It's a risk reputation issue. It's getting the board support, and it's viewing it as a marketing opportunity, which, you know, I want to get to in a second. And you're doing so well on time that I'm going to slip in another question. Financial benefits.
Bruce,
you know, it seems to me that, yes?
Bruce, sorry, may I add something about
Please.
the availability of data? So in the case of Infineon and Allianz, we're talking about real large corps, right? Globally operating complex organizations with tens and hundreds of thousands of employees. And but some people might argue, well, probably they have these large human capital management systems where they have these KPIs and these data stored in kind of an HR data lake or something like that. But what about small and medium enterprises, right? A lot of people say for them it's much more complex to collect this data, and this might also be a very interesting case because it's not even for small and medium enterprises, because the ISO standard, you know, differentiates within the requirements between large organizations and small and medium organizations. So for small and medium organizations, a subset of KPIs is required according to the standard, and this subset of KPIs is kind of easy to gather and to collect for small and medium enterprises. And so this is a very important argument. You know, it's not only doable for large enterprises, but it's also doable for SMEs.
Well, as you know, the only other company in the world that has an ISO 30414 certification has 300 employees. And now they are a technology company, but
yeah.
But getting Jochen to this issue of financial benefits, as you know, there are certain metrics that some people believe are actually predictive of certain human capital metrics like HCROI or HC value add or other productivity issues that are actually predictive of financial results potentially. Have you folks, and I'm going to ask this of you as well, Ingo, and of you as well, Heiko, have you begun to attempt to look at that to kind of track your indices and see how they might relate, or is that a little bit out of scope?
Yeah.
So when this question comes, you start, Jochen.
No, go ahead, please. No.
So we took this opportunity to start creating a better understanding about the financial and the non-financial returns and how purposeful the result of the investment in human capital are for internal as well as for external stakeholders. So this is a process. We are in the midst of it together with our finance community to see how we can start harvesting that. And our CHRO is also now a regular participant in investor calls. So it's interesting that this topic gets more and more momentum. So it's not the only topic on HR that is coming up, but it's one of the topics that gets more and more momentum. So I think timing-wise, it was a good coincidence, always with a bit of a proportion of luck, that the pre-work was there, and now we can start harvesting in an early stage, which is good for us.
Your perspective, Jochen.
Yeah. Also, I give you a simple example. Our quarterly report to the Board of Management on HR starts with financial/HR figures. We always look into operating profit, revenue per FTE, salaries and wages. Nowadays, also with I would not call it trends, forgive me for that, but equal pay is a measure which goes in the same direction. So not only external, also internal, we look into that figures regularly. And for sure, we see also the benefit out of that by steering this consequently and understanding also the differences around the world. Yeah? So as Heiko has said, we are located in over 70 countries, and there you definitely see also benefits, disadvantages, or advantages out of the situation.
Boy, that would be an entirely different webinar. Don't even go down. That's very interesting. Heiko, are you seeing, you mentioned all the benefits. As you know, on some of the programs you've been on with us, with colleagues in the United States, there's increasing talk about really looking at people as the last bastion of value creation.
Yeah.
We've traditionally looked at people as a sunk cost, as a unit of production, How can we maximize productivity, quality, output? But really now the new notion is that no, people are really it's the people at Allianz and Infineon whose ingenuity, whose creativity, whose innovation are creating new ways to make money. So do we really see the potential for human capital management, stakeholder management to really be viewed as a competitive edge that moves from a nice to have to a need to have? And Ingo and Jochen, I'm going to ask for your view on that as well. Is this going to become something that's really viewed as a financial, not only a financial, but an experiential competitive edge?
Well, I think we're not completely there yet, but we are on the way. So, for example, SAP, another really large German company in the technology sector, they publish an integrated report. So integrated in terms of the annual report and the HR report and the sustainability report are integrated into one big report, and this is published via their webpage, because they say our investors, the analysts, they want to have the whole story in one document, and the whole story is not only the financial statement, but the look behind the curtain, the look into the company, what happens there, what happens sustainability wise, what happens with human capital management, and things like that. And I know other companies who are also thinking about, developing and publishing an integrated report in order to have the whole story in one document. And so this is completely, for me, a sign that this goes into the right direction. And we also see that a lot of companies are thinking about, deriving a people-related, you might say, HR strategy directly from the overall business strategy. So this is a strategic point of view. Or put it the other way around, for a lot of companies, it's very important to have an HR strategy embedded into the business strategy of an organization, because they understand that if they want to deliver the strategy, the business strategy that they developed, then they need the workforce to do so. So the workforce strategy, you might say, has for a lot of companies is going to be an integral part of the overall strategy. So these are all kind of signs, you might say, that it goes into the right direction, but we are not there yet, I'm afraid.
Well, I'm going to ask you, we're getting close to the end of this, but Ingo and Jochen, I'm going to ask you, I'm trying to think, you have, you folks are big football fans, right? You have what, 4 quarters in the game? I'm not a big football guy. What is it, 3 or 4? I want to know what part of the game are you guys in Europe?
2 halves.
2. Oh, then that ruins it. Because in Yankee, we have it easy. In baseball, we have 9 innings, right? So I can say, what inning are we in? But you're our German friends, and you don't play cricket. But if, let's say it's 9 innings, okay? You know that concept, 9. Where are we? What, Ingo, in terms of a strategic and systematic approach to people management in Europe, from your standpoint, reading all the business publications in the European Union, where are we in terms of a strategic and systematic approach to people management across the enterprise, viewing people as an asset?
I really like that question, but it's not easy to answer. So I would say the groundwork, the foundation is there. The interest of the external stakeholders increases. HR is asked to come to these stakeholder meetings more and more. And also internally, we got a lot of questions from employee representatives, from employees directly, and also from external candidates. So when you now ask me for a figure out of this 9 innings, I would say 5 to 6. So wow. we have a solid foundation. We know what we do. We know why we do what we do, and we know how we contribute. And I think we have ideas how we could do more. And this is now depending on the company overall strategy as well as the sustainability part of it. so that we can say, what do we want to invest in and how much effort can we allow ourselves in HR as being primarily not creating revenue, but more cost. How much more do we want to do? And can we put together a compelling business case? And so far, so good, I would say. I'm very optimistic that we can do more. The question is, does it make sense? And as I said, we are in the midst of this discussion with our board. So far, we do now ISO, and let's see what we do next.
Jochen, your point of view. Sorry to give you a US game example.
No, I will translate it now into soccer. Forgive me, Bruce. So if we look at soccer, I would say we have succeeded the first half already. We are in good shape for the second half. We are playing forward. We have maybe scored already 1 or 2 goals. And now it's time to score the third goal to win the game in the end. And we do that, as Heiko also has said. I think we see it. We are investigating into that ideas also to combine the reports. There are projects kicked off. Secondly, I think our sustainability report next year will be already disclosed in March, due to the fact that analysts gave us feedback they need to have the data earlier published to be able to review, to be prepared for the annual general meeting, etc. So if you look next time a soccer game, then have a look when they score. I think when we are on the way to score the third goal.
Let me tell you, in the US, when the World Cup is here, everybody is watching the game, except me. Heiko, we're just about ready to wrap up. What advice would you give? The one thing I haven't heard from any of you gentlemen is linking in the marketing group, and maybe that's an American thing, but to me, this is a marketing issue. But maybe in your conclusions, gentlemen, and what advice would you give, Heiko, to any company, any CHRO or executive who's thinking of pursuing a strategic approach to human capital such that they would publish a report and have it certified?
Well, I think this is definitely the most important advice that I can give, that this has to be part of the strategic approach of the whole company. This is a strategic topic, because being able to have the workforce that is required to deliver the strategy, I mean, how more strategic can it get, right? So my advice would be, put it on the CEO agenda and drive it from there, and don't wait until you get a lot of pressure from investors or other stakeholders and then be forced to do it, but do it proactively, you might say, and consider it as the most strategic measure that you can do in the next couple of decades.
Jochen, your advice for anybody going down this road?
Yeah, also be curious and don't shy away from that. I had discussions with my US colleagues over time and in other countries, and I would always recommend that. So we started our journey also with that basis, this, let's say, foundation, and we had a successful journey on that. And disclosing the data and showing also the strengths of your company, that is something what you should be really also going forward proud of.
Thank you. Ingo, you get the last word.
Yeah, I can only repeat what Heiko said. Put it on the CEO's agenda. Have conversations with this person in the board, and because it's strategically relevant. And our HR motto is people create value. And this is how you can build a very nice bridge between the soft topics in HR and the hard value creation you can measure in dollars and euros. So for me, it's a compelling and a nice story, and the advice is, and I liked Jochen's way to put it, be curious, try it out, and go for it.
Well, thank you. And it seems to me that one of the nice things about the process is that once you develop the data feeds, once you tackle that, you've got the system set up, right? So keeping that data and getting that data now, I would imagine, is pretty easy next time around. Is that, I just wanted to confirm that, in other words, once you break that hurdle, that data hurdle, it sounds to me it's pretty scalable.
Yeah,
I guess just wanted to confirm that. Okay, folks, thank you so much for volunteering your time to share your experiences. Again, we'll be marketing this throughout the year, and it'll be published next week on our YouTube channel. Once again, thank you so much, and we're going to be signing off here.